The Ridda Wars, also known as the Wars of Apostasy, were a series of military campaigns launched by the Caliph Abu Bakr against rebel Arabian tribes during 632 and 633 AD, just after Muhammad died. A rebel's position was that they had submitted to Muhammad as the prophet of God, but owed nothing to Abu Bakr. Some rebels followed either Tulayha or Musaylima or Sajjah, all of whom claimed prophethood. Most of the tribes were defeated and reintegrated into the Caliphate. The peoples surrounding Mecca did not revolt. Prelude. In about the middle of May 632, Muhammad, now ailing, ordered a large expedition to be prepared against the Byzantine Empire in order to avenge the martyrs of Battle of Mu'tah. 3,000 Muslims were to join it. Usama ibn Zayd, a young man and son of Zayd ibn Haritha who was killed in the battle at Mu'tah, was appointed as commander of this force so he could avenge the death of his father. However, Muhammad died in June 632 and Abu Bakr elected as caliph by a small group called the Ansar. On the first day of his caliphate, Abu Bakr ordered the army of Usama to prepare for march. Abu Bakr was under great pressure regarding this expedition due to rising rebellion and apostasy across Arabia, but he was determined. Before his march, Usama sent Umar to Caliph Abu Bakr and is reported to have said, "Go to the Caliph, ask him to permit the army to remain at Medina. All the leaders of the community are with me. If we go, none will be left to prevent the infidels from tearing Medina to pieces." However, Abu Bakr refused. He was moved to this decision at least partially by his desire to carry out the unfulfilled military plan of Muhammad. On June 26, 632, the army of Usama broke camp and moved out. After leaving Medina, Usama had marched to Tabuk. Most of the tribes in this region opposed him fiercely but were defeated by Abu Bakr's army. Usama raided far and wide in the region of northern Arabia, starting with the Khuzar, and then made his way to Dormatu el-Jandil. As a direct result of his operations, several rebel tribes resubmitted to Madinian rule and claimed that they re-accepted Islam. The Khuzar remained rebellious and unrepentant. However, Amr ibn al-As later attacked them and forced them to surrender again. Usama next marched to Mu'tah, attacked the Christian Arabs of the tribes of Banu Kalb and Ghassanids in a small battle. Then he returned to Medina, bringing with him a large number of captives and a considerable amount of wealth, part of which comprised the spoils of war and part taxation of the reconquered tribes. The Islamic army remained out of Medina for 40 days. Defensive Medina. The concentrations of rebels nearest Medina were located in two areas: Abrakt 72 miles northeast of Medina, and Dukisa 24 miles east of Medina. These concentrations consisted of the tribes of Banu Ghatafan, the Hawazin, and the Tayy. Abu Bakr sent envoys to all the enemy tribes, calling upon them to remain loyal to Islam and continue to pay the zakah. A week or two after the departure of the Islamic army under Usama, the rebel tribes surrounded Medina, knowing that there were few fighting forces in the city. Meanwhile, Tulayha, a self-proclaimed prophet, reinforced the rebels at Dukisa. In the third week of July 632, the apostate army moved from Dukisa to Duhasa, from where they prepared to launch an attack on Medina. Abu Bakr received intelligence of this move of rebels, and immediately prepared for the defense of Medina. As the main army was out of Medina under Usama, Abu Bakr scraped together a fighting force mainly from the clan of Muhammad, the Banu Hashim. The army had stalwarts like Ali ibn Abi Talib, Talha ibn Ubaydullah and Zubair ibn al-Awwam, who would later conquer Egypt. Each of them was appointed as commander of 1/3 of the newly organized force. Before the apostates could do anything, Abu Bakr launched his army against their outposts and drove drove them back to Duhasa. The following day, Abu Bakr marched from Medina with the main army and moved towards Duhasa. As the riding camels were all gone with Usama's army, he could only muster inferior pack camels, and the army mounted these camels. These pack camels, being untrained for battle, bolted when Hibal, the apostate commander at Duhasa, made a surprise attack from the hills on the Muslims, and the Muslims retreated to Medina. The apostates recaptured the outposts that they lost a few days earlier. At Medina, Abu Bakr reorganized the army for the battle and attacked the apostates during the night, taking them by surprise. The apostates retreated from Duhasa to Dukisa. On the morning, Abu Bakr led his forces to Dukisa and defeated the rebel tribes and captured Dukisa on the 1st of August 632. The defeated apostate tribes retreated to Abrak, where more clansmen of the Ghatfan, the Hawasan, and the Tayy were gathered. Abu Bakr left a residual force of soldiers under the command of Nu'man ibn Mukran at Dukisa and returned with his main army to Medina. On the 4th of August 632, Usama's army arrived in Medina. The army had been away for 40 days. Abu Bakr ordered Usama to rest his men in Medina and re-equip them to fight against the rebels. Meanwhile, in the second week of August 632, Abu Bakr with his army moved to Dukisa, taking the remaining forces from Nu'man ibn Mukran under his command. He moved to Abrak, where the retreated rebels had gathered, and defeated them. The remaining rebels retreated to Busaka, where Tulayha had moved with his army from Samira. Abu Bakr's strategy. In the fourth week of August 632, Abu Bakr moved to Dukisa with all available fighting forces. There he planned the strategy of the campaign of the apostasy to deal with the various enemies who occupied the entire land of Arabia except for the small area in the possession of the Muslims. The battles which he had fought recently against the apostate concentrations at Dukisa and Abrak were in the nature of immediate preventive action to protect Medina and discourage further offensives by the enemy. These actions enabled Abu Bakr to secure a base from which he could fight the major campaign that lay ahead, thus gaining time for the preparation and launching of his main forces. Abu Bakr had to fight not one but several enemies: Tulayha at Busaka, Malik bin Nuwayra at Butar, Musaylima at Yamama. He had to deal with widespread apostasy on the eastern and southern coasts of Arabia, in Bahrain, in Oman, in Mara, in Hadramaut and in Yemen. There was apostasy in the region south and east of Mecca and by the Qusr in northern Arabia. Abu Bakr formed the army into several corps. The strongest corps, and this was the main punch of the Muslims, was the corps of Khalid ibn Walid. This was used to fight the most powerful of the rebel forces. Other corps were given areas of secondary importance in which to subdue the less dangerous apostate tribes. The first corps to go into action was that of Khalid, and the timing of the dispatch of other corps hinged on the operations of Khalid, who was given the task of fighting the strongest enemy forces one after the other. Abu Bakr's plan was first to clear the area of west-central Arabia, then tackle Malik bin Nuwayra, and finally concentrate against the most dangerous and powerful enemy, the self-proclaimed prophet Musaylima. Campaign of apostasy. The Caliph formed 11 main corps, each under its own commander. A standard was given to each corps. The available manpower was distributed among these corps, and while some commanders were given immediate missions, others were given missions for which they would be launched later. The 11 corps commanders and their assigned objectives were as follows: Khalid ibn Walid, first Tulayha bin Khuwaylid al-Azdi from the Asad tribe at Busaka, then Malik bin Nuwayra at Butar. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, confront Musaylima at Yamama but not to get involved until more forces were built up. Amr ibn al-As, the apostate tribes of Khuzā and Wadiya in the area of Tabuk and Dormat al-Jandal. Shurahbil bin Hassana, follow Ikrimah and await the Caliph's instructions. Khalid bin Sa'id, certain apostate tribes on the Syrian frontier. Tulayha bin Hajiz, the apostate tribes of Halasin and Bani Sulaim in the area east of Medina and Mecca. Ala bin al-Hadrami, the apostates in Bahrain. Hudhaifa bin Masan, the apostates in Oman. Arfaha bin Hatama, the apostates in Mara. Muhajir bin Abi Umayyah, the apostates in the Yemen, then the Kinda in Hadramaut. Suwaid bin Muqarran, the apostates in the coastal area north of the Yemen. As soon as the organization of the corps was complete, Khalid marched off, to be followed a little later by Ikrimah and Amr ibn al-As. The other corps were held back by the Caliph and dispatched weeks and even months later. The dispatch was conditioned by the progress of Khalid's operations against the hardcore of enemy opposition. Before the various corps left Jokisa, however, envoys were sent by Abu Bakr to all apostate tribes in a final attempt to induce them to submit. Apart from the specific objectives, the corps commanders were given the following instructions: seek the tribes which are your objectives. Call the azan. If the tribe answers with the azan, do not attack. After the azan, ask the tribe to confirm its submission, including the payment of zakat. If confirmed, do not attack. Those who submit will not be attacked. Those who do not answer with the azan, or after the azan do not confirm full submission, will be dealt with by the sword. All apostates who have killed Muslims will be killed. With these instructions, Abu Bakr launched the forces of his caliphate against the apostates. Central Arabia. Apostasy and rebellion in Central Arabia was led by Musaylima, a self-proclaimed prophet, in the fertile region of Yamama. He was mainly supported by the powerful tribe of Banu Hanifa. At Bozaka in north-central Arabia, another self-proclaimed prophet, Tulayha, a tribal chief of Bani Asad, led the rebellion against Medina, aided by the allied tribes of Banu Ghatfan, the Harasan, and the Tayy. At Najd, Malik ibn Nuwayra led the tribes of Banu Tamim against the authority of Medina. Buzaka. On receiving intelligence of the Muslims' preparations, Tulayha too prepared for a battle, and was further reinforced by the contingents of the allied tribes. Before launching Khalid against Tulayha, Abu Bakr sought ways and means of reducing the latter's strength, so that the battle could be fought with the maximum prospects of victory. Nothing could be done about the tribes of Bani Asad and Banu Ghatafan, which stood solidly behind Tulayha, but the Tayy were not so staunch in the support of Tulayha, and the chief, Adi ibn Haytham, was a devout Muslim. Adi was appointed by Abu Bakr to negotiate with the tribal elders to withdraw the contingent from Tulayha's army. The negotiations were a success, and Adi brought with him 500 horsemen of his tribe to reinforce Khalid's army. Khalid next marched against another apostate tribe, Jadila. Here again Adi ibn Haytham offered his services to persuade the tribe to submit without bloodshed. Bani Jadila submitted, and the 1,000 warriors joined Khalid's army. Khalid, now much stronger than when he had left Jokisa, marched for Buzaka. There, in mid-September 632 CE, he defeated Tulayha in the Battle of Buzaka. The remaining army of Tulayha retreated to Gamra, 20 miles from Buzaka, and were defeated in the Battle of Gamra in the third week of September 632 CE. Several tribes submitted to the Caliph after Khalid's decisive victories. Moving south from Buzaka, Khalid reached Nakra in October 632 CE, with an army now 6,000 strong, and defeated the rebel tribe of Banu Salim in the Battle of Nakra, 632 in third week of October 632 CE. Khalid defeated a tribal chiefess, Salma, in the Battle of Zafar. Afterwards he moved to Najd against the rebel tribe of Banu Tamim and the Sheikh Malik ibn Nuwayra. Najd. At Najd, getting the news of Khalid's decisive victories against apostates in Bozaka, many clans of Banu Tamim hastened to visit Khalid. But the Banu Yabu, a branch of Bani Tamim, under the chief Malik ibn Nuwayra, hung back. Malik was a chief of some distinction, a warrior, noted for his generosity, and a famous poet. Bravery, generosity, and poetry were the three qualities most admired among the Arabs. At the time of Muhammad, he had been appointed as a tax collector for the tribe of Banu Tamim. As soon as Malik heard of the death of Muhammad, he gave back all the tax to his tribe's people, saying, "Now you are the owner of your wealth." Most scholars agreed that he was adhering to the normal beliefs of the Arabs of his time, in which they should cease to pledge their allegiance to a tribe upon the death of its sheikh. His riders were stopped by Khalid's army at the town of Butter. Khalid asked them about the signing of pact with Sajjah. They said it was just because they wanted revenge against their terrible enemies. When Khalid reached Najd, he found no opposing army. He sent his cavalry to nearby villages and ordered them to call the azan to each party they meet. Zira bin Aswa, a squadron leader, arrested the family of Malik, claiming they did not answer the call to prayer. Malik avoided direct contact with Khalid's army and ordered his followers to scatter, and he and his family apparently moved away across the desert. He refused to give zakat, hence differentiating between prayer and zakat. Nevertheless, Malik was accused of rebellion against the state of Medina. He was also to be charged for his entering in an anti-Caliphate alliance with Sajjah, a self-proclaimed prophetess. Malik was arrested along with his clan men. Malik was asked by Khalid about his crimes. Malik's response was, "Your master said this, your master said that," referring to Abu Bakr. Khalid declared Malik a rebel apostate and ordered his execution. The death of Malik and Khalid's taking of his wife Layla created a controversy. Some officers of his army, including a prominent companion of Muhammad, Abu Qatada, believed that Khalid killed Malik to take his wife Layla bint al-Minhal. Yamama. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, one of the corps commanders, was instructed to make contact with Musaylima at Yamama, but not to engage in fighting until Khalid joined him. Abu Bakr's intention in giving Ikrimah this mission was to tie Musaylima down at Yamama. With Ikrimah on the horizon, Musaylima would remain in expectation of a Muslim attack, and thus not be able to leave his base. With Musaylima committed, Khalid would be free to deal with the apostate tribes of north-central Arabia without interference from Yamama. Meanwhile, Abu Bakr sent Sharabil's corps to reinforce Ikrimah at Yamama. Ikrimah, however, in early September 632 AD attacked Musaylima's forces and was defeated. He wrote the details of his actions to Abu Bakr, who, both pained and angered by the rashness of Ikrimah and his disobedience, ordered him to proceed with his force to Oman to assist Tulayha. Once Tulayha had completed his task, to march to Mara to help Arfaha, and thereafter go to Yemen to help Mahajah. Meanwhile, Abu Bakr sent orders to Khalid to march against Musaylima. Sharabil's corps that was stationed at Yamama was to reinforce Khalid's corps. In addition to this, Abu Bakr assembled a fresh army of Ansar and Muhajirin in Medina that joined Khalid's corps at Butar. From Butar, Khalid marched to Yamama to join with Sharabil's corps. Though Abu Bakr had instructed Shurahbil not to engage Musaylima's forces until the arrival of Khalid, shortly before the arrival of Khalid, Shurahbil engaged Musaylima's forces and was defeated too. Khalid joined with the corps of Shohabil early in December 632. The combined force of Muslims, now 13,000 strong, defeated Musaylima's army in the Battle of Yamamah, which was fought in the third week of December 632 CE. The fortified city of Yamamah surrendered peacefully later that week. Khalid established his headquarters at Yamamah, from where he dispatched columns to all over the plain of Akraba to subdue the region around Yamamah and to kill or capture all who resisted. Thereafter all of Central Arabia submitted to Medina. What remained of the apostasy in the less vital areas of Arabia was rooted out by the Muslims in a series of well-planned campaigns within 5 months. Oman. In mid-September 632, Abu Bakr dispatched Hudayfa bin Masan's corps to Oman to tackle the apostasy in Oman, where the tribe of Az-D, that dominated the region of Oman, had revolted under the chief Laqit bin Malik, known more commonly as Dhul-Taj, i.e., the crowned one. Quote, according to some reports, he also claimed prophethood. Hudayfa entered the province of Oman, but not having strong enough forces to fight Dhul-Taj, he decided to wait for reinforcement, and wrote to the Caliph accordingly. The Caliph sent Ikrimah to aid him in late September 632. Ikrimah marched from Yamamah to Oman, and the combined forces of these two generals defeated Dhul-Taj at the Battle of Dabba, fought in late November 632 at Dabba, a stronghold of Dhul-Taj. Dhul-Taj was killed in battle. Being appointed governor of Oman, Hudayfa next set about the re-establishment of law and order. Ikrimah, having no local administrative responsibility, used his corps to subdue the neighborhood of Dabba, and in a number of small actions succeeded in breaking the resistance of those of the Az-D who had continued to defy the authority of Medina. Northern Arabia. Sometime in October 632, Ham's corps were dispatched to Syrian border to subdue the apostates' tribes, most importantly the tribes of Quza and the Wadiya, in the region around Tabuk and Dormat al-Jandal. Amr was not able to beat the tribes into submission until Shohabil joined him in January after Battle of Yamamah, Yemen. The Yemen had been the first province to rebel against the authority of Islam when the tribe of Ans rose in arms under the leadership of its chief and self-proclaimed prophet Al-Aswad, the Black One, who was killed by Feroz the Persian, while Muhammad still lived, and thereafter Feroz had acted as governor of Yemen at Sana'a. When word arrived that Muhammad had died, the people of the Yemen again revolted, this time under the leadership of a man named Qais bin Abd Yagis. The avowed aim of the apostates was to drive the Muslims out of the Yemen, and they decided to achieve this objective by assassinating Feroz and other important Muslim leaders, thus rendering the Muslim community leaderless. Feroz somehow managed to escape and took shelter in the mountains. This happened in June and July 632. For the next 6 months Feroz remained in his mountainous stronghold, where over the months he was joined by thousands of Muslims of Yemen. When he felt strong enough, Feroz led his men against Qais and marched to Sana'a and defeated Qais, who retreated with his remaining men northeast to Abian, where they all surrendered and were subsequently pardoned by the Caliph, Mar'a, from Oman. Following the orders of Abu Bakr, Ikrimah marched to Mar'a to join Arfahar bin Hatama. As Arfahar had not yet arrived, Ikrimah, instead of waiting for him, tackled the local rebels on his own. At Jarat, Ikrimah met two rebel armies preparing for battle. Here he persuaded the weaker to embrace Islam and then joined up with them to defeat their opponents. Having re-established Islam in Mar'a, Ikrimah moved his corps to Abian, where he rested his men and awaited further developments. Bahrain. After the Battle of Yamama, Abu Bakr sent Ullah bin al-Hadrami's corps against the rebels of Bahrain. Ullah arrived in Bahrain to find the apostate forces gathered at Hajjah and entrenched in a strong position. Ullah mounted a surprise attack one night and captured the city. The rebels retreated to the coastal regions, where they made one more stand but were decisively defeated. Most of them surrendered and reverted to Islam. This operation was completed at about the end of January 633. Hadramaut, the last of the great revolts of the apostasy, was that of the powerful tribe of Kinda, which inhabited the region of Najran, Hadramaut, and eastern Yemen. They did not break into revolt until January 633. Ziyad bin Lubayd, Muslim governor of Hadramaut, operated against them and raided Riyaz, after which the whole of the Kinda broke into revolt under Ashur's bin Qais and prepared for war. However, the strength of the two forces, i.e. apostate and Muslim, was so well balanced that neither side felt able to start serious hostilities. Ziyad waited for reinforcements before attacking the rebels. Reinforcements were on the way. Muhajir bin Abi Umayyah, the last of the corps commanders to be dispatched by Abu Bakr, defeated some rebel tribes in Najran, southeastern Arabia, and was directed by Abu Bakr to march to Hadramaut and join Ziyad against the Kinda. The Caliph also instructed Ikrimah, who was at Abiyan, to join Ziyad and Muhajir's forces. In late January 633, the forces of Muhajir and Ziyad combined at Zafar, capital of Hadramaut, under the overall command of the former, and defeated Ashurs, who retreated to the fortified town of Nujah. Just after this battle, the corps of Ikrimah also arrived. The three Muslim corps, under the overall command of Muhajir, advanced on Nujah and laid siege to the fortified city. Nujah was captured sometime in mid-February 633. With the defeat of the Kinda at Nujah, the last of the great apostate movements collapsed. Arabia was safe for Islam. The campaign of the apostasy was fought and completed during the 11th year of the Hijra. The year 12 Hijri dawned on March 18, 633, with Arabia united under the central authority of the Caliphate Medina. This campaign was Abu Bakr's greatest political and military triumph, with the great help of Ali bin Abi Talib, who was afraid of collapse of Islamic civilization. Aftermath. With the collapse of the rebellions and Arabia united under the central authority of the Caliphate Medina, Caliph Abu Bakr now decided to expand the empire. It is unclear what his intentions were, whether it was a full-scale expansion plan or preemptive attacks to secure more territory to create a buffer zone between the Islamic State and the powerful Sassanid and Byzantine empires. This set the stage for the Islamic conquest of Persia to begin. Khalid was sent to the Persian Empire with an army consisting of 18,000 volunteers to conquer the richest province of the Persian Empire, Iraq. After the successful conquest of Iraq, Abu Bakr sent his armies to invade Roman Syria, a main province of the Byzantine Empire. Implications. The events were later regarded as primarily a religious movement by Arabic historians. However, the early sources indicate that in reality it was primarily an attempt to restore political control over the Arabian tribes. After all, the rebelling Arabs only refused to pay zakat, but they did not refuse to perform the salah. This, however, is disputed and explained by Muslim scholars such that the dictation of zakat was one of the 5 pillars of Islam and its denial or withholding is an active denial of a cornerstone of the faith, and is therefore an act of apostasy. Bernard Lewis states that the fact that Islamic historians have regarded this as a primarily religious movement was due to a later interpretation of events in terms of a theological worldview. The opponents of the Muslim armies were not only apostates, but also tribes which were largely or even completely independent from the Muslim community. However, these revolts also had a religious aspect. Medina had become the center of a new Arabian social and political system of which religion was an integral part. Consequently, it was inevitable that any reaction against this system should have a religious aspect.